Wow, wow, wow. Welcome back to Clicks and Bricks. Stick around for this episode where we talk to Bridget Brick from Get Brick Capital. We talk about how using DSCR loans can help single mothers create sustainable lifestyles for them and their families in the long term.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Clicks and Bricks. This is episode 4, season 4. I'm excited to bring you Bridget Brick of Get Brick Capital. Bridget, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Happy Thursday.
Thank you for joining us. I'm super excited to get into your story. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, what brought you into entrepreneurship, and what is Get Brick Capital?
Sure. What brought me into entrepreneurship, I think really when I was a child, my Barbies had businesses. You know, they weren't like worried about relationships and clothes. They all had like the most successful companies. So I think this was just born into me. And I've had 5 other businesses. Really what led me to open Get Brick Capital was a spiritual awakening in 2020. And I say that because I was in mortgages. I was in the mortgage industry while at university. We would do telemarketing. We would call customers who had those adjustable rate mortgages, and we would convince them to get into a fixed rate mortgage because, you know, the adjustable rates were about to go up. And although our fixed rates were more, it was going to be better for them long term. So very successful. I was one of the top 2 or 3 telemarketers every single week. And I had to be because that's how I paid my rent. You made bonuses, like you made $8 an hour unless you sold the max. And then you made $12 an hour plus $50 bonuses. So I had to. I didn't have a choice. But eventually worked my way up to management. And then once I graduated university, I sort of got distracted and drawn or magnetized over to the tech startup world. I was there for about a decade. I ended up doing my final project was with a company or the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise Office to launch 3 companies into the North American market. After the success of that, I launched my own consulting company. I became a top speaker at San Diego Startup. I was San Diego 40 under 40 that year. And I say all this to say I was quickly rising in success, exponentially there at the end of my career in the tech world, the tech startup world as a COO on demand. And in 2020, it all came crumbling down and I realized I was good at it and I had all the outward success of it, but I was not happy and I was not fulfilled. And I just thought it's interesting because I'm helping 1 or 2 founders become mega rich every time I, take on a consulting client, but I'm not helping the everyday American. And I look around and I see the everyday American wanting time freedom, decision freedom, money freedom. I see the everyday American struggling with the sort of matrix that we live in and being stuck in it, really. And I want to help people escape the matrix. So really in 2020, I threw my hands up after, I think it was about April, and just said, whatever, I'm just going to travel for the rest of the year and I'll figure it out. And I say that to say the context was I lived in California and we couldn't be outside anyway. So the only way to be outside was to take our group of friends and go down to Mexico and on and on. And the last trip we went was to Miami. So the following year, I actually moved to Miami. Not before taking on a role with a brokerage, with a company that does DSCR loans. And they did the broader aspect of it at the time, helping them scale. And once I learned about it, learned how it actually helps the everyday American get into loans and real estate much easier, I then set out to have my own. And we can get into a little bit later how I ended up starting my own brokerage so quickly. But that's the quick take on where I was, where I got deterred to, and how I came back into the mortgage world. Is in 2020, I threw my hands up, I went traveling, and I just let what flowed to me come to me, and it brought me right back into mortgages, which is what I was doing when I was at university.
Wonderful. You said a couple things there that I really want to dive into.
Uh-huh.
The first one, I want to jump into, you said the matrix, and I definitely want to talk about that. But before we talk about that, can you just define what a brokerage is to the audience for the people that don't necessarily know what a brokerage firm does?
Yeah, so there's 2 different types of brokerages because there are 2 different types of capital partners or lenders. On one hand, you have a retail lender. This is a lender where a broker can work with that lender to bring you as the customer, the borrowing customer, to them. Or you yourself can do all this research online and go on all these forums and take a chance to take yourself directly to that lender. Now, if you work with that lender, the experience is only going to be as good as your loan officer. Maybe it's a good one, but if you work with a broker to the lender, then your experience will be as good as that brokerage, right? But what I'm saying is that type of lender you can get to on your own. Then there's the type of lender slash broker relationship where the lender is a wholesale lender. You cannot, as an individual borrower, take yourself to that lender and get a loan from them. That's because they really place us, the brokerage, as the lender, the actual lender. And so what we do is we package up your entire deal. We go through all of the pre-packaged prep, get it ready, and then we submit it directly to their underwriter. So that is what we do. That's what I do. That's how mine is set up, because I don't just want to get you what you can find yourself. I want to get you the best possible rates and scenarios out there. And those wholesale lenders always have that. So that's how my brokerage is set up. And the key with this is, especially with refinance loans, is because we own the process. If you get an appraisal that you don't like, we have the power to throw it out and order another one. Whereas if you go to a retail lender, the appraisal you get is the appraisal you get. And if you don't like it and order another one, they're going to take the lower of the two appraisals anyway. Yeah. So you're really not in a good position. You can't control the outcome of the money that you get as well as you can when you work with a wholesale lender and a brokerage like mine.
Absolutely. So basically, you have a representative representing you to the mega banks across the country, across the globe, really pushing for the best rate for you. So a broker is kind of like your negotiator with all of these different banks.
Yeah. So we package you up. We take you to a capital partner that has a fund on the back end of them. Yes. And depending which program you go into, we have to follow the rules of that fund in the underwriting process.
And for the people out there that don't quite understand the nuance of this, a broker is working in your best interest.
Right.
A loan officer at a bank is working for the bank's best interest.
That's
and you want a partner on your side when you're going in that, unless you have some pretty hefty chops on negotiating direct with your local bank, which I can talk to you about a whole bunch of that kind of stuff too. But it's, if you're new to the world of finance, get a broker, find a broker that you really trust. And Bridget, it seems like to be an amazing partner here.
There's one more thing I'll add to that. When you work directly with a directly retail lender, if their program doesn't work, you're done. You've wasted the whole process. You've got to go now find someone else. When you work with someone like me, we have all these different programs. We have all these different capital partners. So, and I can't tell you how many times, at least 10% of the time, something happens in underwriting that you didn't foresee, that I didn't foresee. It only came up in title, or the zoning was off, or you had a federal lien you didn't know about, or I've had customers who have had past criminal records come up of, like, say, possession of firearm or possession of weed or whatever. And some capital partners will work with that and some won't. And so what a broker like me can do is very quickly switch you to another program where we can fit you into the parameters. So you have to have somebody who has a solution-based mindset. And that's what a brokerage can do, is just quickly flip you over to the next thing and get you closed.
Absolutely. Are you primarily commercial or residential or mix?
So we are residential, but from a commercial standpoint, meaning we do business purpose loans for residential units that people are going to live in and pay rent, either short-term or long-term.
Okay. So a real estate investor could go to you as a broker as well if they were in that business. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you, I have used the equity in my home to start businesses more than one time.
Yeah.
Successful most of the time, but I've also lost it all. If that's the approach you're going to take to start your business, I'll support you, but make sure that you understand your risk tolerance, and a broker might be able to help you understand that as well. Bridget, I want to talk about the matrix. You said escape the matrix. And, I really make a huge effort not to be a red pill Andrew Tate kind of guy, but I appreciate a lot of what he does say. And breaking the matrix in my mind is the simple fact of, we grow up and we're told this is how you're supposed to live your life. Get a job, work paycheck to paycheck, save a little bit, give to the charities and the churches. That's what we're told to do. If you look outside of that, sometimes you're ostracized or something like that. But to me, it's been the only way to live my life. Can you tell me a little bit about what that looks like in your mind, and how people can get from where they're at to starting to chase their dreams? Because in 2025, with AI and robotics coming around the board, being individual and being yourself, I think, is probably the most important thing that a human can do right now.
It's important to understand the structure you are in and what the structure is teaching you to think and do. And the easiest example I have of that is the news. The minute you quit watching the news, you begin to escape the matrix, because you stop being told what to think and therefore the actions behind your beliefs, right? Because beliefs and then actions, and then you have your reality. And so when you stop turning off the news, you're able to really see the world for what it is, and you're able to not be pushed around emotionally, and you're able to get a really good foothold of your own life. And how this relates to real estate is an example. A lot of times, and you can see these market cycles where the interest rates are so high, rah, 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 rabble, rabble. That's meant to tell you and convey to you, don't borrow money, money's too expensive, this is not the time. Now, if you study Ray Dalio, how the economic machine works, it's a video on YouTube you can watch, you will understand that we live in a credit economy, an economy that extends credit, and these market cycles last about 5 to 8 years. So if you look at every 5 to 8 year cycle, there will be some period where people were like, I should have bought when. Well, sure, you should have bought when you can say the rates were low, but guess what happens when the rates are low? So I'm gonna put a visual out here for you. In 2020, the rates were low, meaning money was cheap to borrow, and houses were relatively inexpensive. They were baseline. They were normal priced. So this was the perfect scenario to buy. Money is cheap, assets are cheap. When everybody can get access to money and money is cheap, then because everybody has access to it, more and more people are offering assets. Hey, I'll pay $3,000 more. I'll pay $5,000 more. I'll pay 10% more. I'll pay 20% more. So then the asset price goes up because people are artificially inflating that because everybody's got money. Okay, so now you're in phase 2 where assets are expensive, but money's still cheap. Well, then the government is like, oh my gosh, there's too much money in the economy. Let's raise the rates so people quit borrowing money. So then they raise the rates. So now you're in phase 3 where rates are high, money is expensive, and assets are expensive. They're overpriced. People are paying too much for them for the real value. So then what happens is people don't have access to money, or people don't want access to money. People have decided because of the news that money is too expensive, the risk is too high. We're just not going to borrow money right now. So as a result, the asset prices are going to fall back to where they should be. Maybe it's not back to where they were, but back to what is now normal. So this is now phase 4, where money is expensive, but assets are starting to lower. And then what happens? The Fed is like, oh, there's not enough money in the economy. People aren't buying enough stuff. Let's lower the rates, right? And then you're back at phase 1. So visually speaking, the sky is falling, I guess, when you're here, right? When everything is so expensive and don't buy anything. And so people are like, oh, I can't buy. But real estate investors understand that when rates are high and assets start to fall, this is the time to borrow money. Because you can buy assets when they are normal priced before everybody drives everything back up again. Even though money's expensive, you can always refinance your money when money becomes cheap again. You cannot overpay for an asset. So if you bought an asset up here, but it's really worth this, you cannot undo that overpayment. And that is the matrix mindset you have got to flip. Oh my gosh, I can't borrow anything when money's expensive. No, you can't borrow and buy things when the assets are expensive because you'll never get that money back. Where with this, you can always refi and get your money back. You can lower your payment. So that's how it relates to real estate.
And I'm not an economist and I'm not a real estate expert by far. I do manage a decent amount of money and I do have some real estate of my own. I wouldn't call it large by far. And I'd like to get your opinion because I think that we've already seen commercial real estate plummeting, right? Mm-hmm. Interest rates are high. Commercial real estate is plummeted. People aren't working in the office and all those things. And I think in my opinion, we're at that high interest rate, high value of the homes. And I've seen some signs of the home value starting to drop already. And I'd just like to hear your input on. It is August 15th, 2020. It's actually the 14th, but 2025. Just for some fun, where do you think we're at in the economy right now so we can just solidify what you believe and we'll see if we're right later? Because that's where I think we're at right now is I think we're leaving stage 4, going back to stage 1.
Sure. So obviously there's no crystal ball and we have no idea geopolitically what decisions are going to be made. Now, with that said, if you study Ray Dalio and you look at the patterns, and I have a touch of the tism, so I look at patterns a lot. If you look at the patterns and you know that patterns cycle lasts 5 to 8 years, and it started in 2020, everything was down here in 2020, and then we did this, and then we did this, and the next thing is this, and then the next thing is this. So if we're already kind of seeing assets fall, which in different markets we've seen the prices of assets fall, we already know we're in this sort of phase 4. And this is, what year are we in? 2025. We're 5 years in to a 5 to 8 year cycle. So then what logically would happen next in the series? The rates would
as
fall.
a business owner, the interest rate has to drop.
Yeah.
Like it feels like they've been trying to run small business out for the last 5 years with this interest rate crap. But
Probably. They're trying to crush middle America.
yeah,
This is why
it
we have
definitely
to
feels
win.
that way. But for as a business owner that's dealing with that, and I've been dealing with it since 2020, right? The interest rates are really high right now, and I have a lot of big real estate that's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that that's coming is exciting, and we've learned to manage our businesses in stage 4
Mm-hmm.
without a whole lot of capital.
Mm-hmm.
And with AI and everything else, we're automating the crap out of everything during this cycle for your business. At least that's what I hope you're doing. And if you're not, go to endlink.com and they'll help you automate anything you want with AI. But it's an exciting time with everything getting ready to happen. And in my belief that the interest rates are getting ready to drop, I think I'm looking for a fun next 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So awesome. Bridget, thank you so much for all that.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to the questions section of the interview. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
So what inspired you to start Get Brick Capital, and how did you identify the need it fills in the real estate investing financing scape?
Sure. So this is a
Thanks.
little bit personal story and a little bit reality. At the time that I was working for the other brokerage and I was helping them scale, I convinced them, I helped you scale and they're making all this money. Like, let me be, a loan officer or a salesperson for you guys. So I did that for a while. And I was also at the time going through a personal transformation course. So again, I told you I had a spiritual awakening. I had done ayahuasca at this point. I had done psilocybin at this point, and that was to remap my brain. My brain needed to be remapped from its old ways of processing things to the correct way of processing things. I'll say that. And you can follow my Instagram page to learn a little bit more about my personal life and what led me there. What kind of trauma from my divorce and relationship. So I was going through then a personal development course in Austin called ALA, Ascension Leadership Academy, and it helps you integrate. Well, it helps you recognize what stands in your way, what boundaries you've put up for yourself, and how to break those down in order to live in your highest potential. So what I learned from that course is that I did not have good boundaries leading up to this moment. That's why I was in the relationship I was in. That's why it ended the way it did. That's why I felt taken advantage of and all the negative that had come out of it. So I noticed that the owner of the brokerage I was working for started to have this resentful behavior towards me, really hateful. Like I would ask a question and there would be this, you need to look it up and then the next day somebody else would ask a very similar question and they would get 3 paragraphs of an answer. And so it's just these little things you start to notice of like, wow, he really doesn't like me. What can I do? Like it's his perception of me, right? And so the only thing you can really do in that point, if you have a conversation and it doesn't change, is you have to remove yourself from that perceiver, because that perceiver is dead set on perceiving you in such a negative way that it will only continue to be a negative experience. And again, this is another thing of teaching people how to get out of the matrix. If you're in a situation where you're being treated poorly, you need to get yourself in a situation where you can get out of it, and real estate and DSCR loans can do that. So back in my situation, I was like, I have got to find a path out of this. I would not allow this treatment from anyone in my family, from anyone I'm romantically involved with, and from any of my friends. Why am I allowing it from a boss or a work situation? And in truth, it's because, well, that's how I make money and pay for my life. And I was like, okay, well, if that's the problem, like what's standing in the way? I have to solve that problem myself. So how can I get myself in a situation where I'm not relying on that income? I can have my own. So I set out in my mind, I can do this on my own. I wonder what kind of clients I would attract. I kid you not, the moment energetically, and again, this is speaking to the spiritual awakening and the spiritual alignment side of my personal life. The moment I made that energetic decision and I was like, I'm ready to leave, I opened an LLC. I started building a website. And I had no customers, no capital partners. I just took the action behind the belief. I can do this myself. Here's now the action so I can have the outcome I want. The next weekend, one of my friends took me to a real estate conference. And I met a borrower who had a specific loan type of a need. They do BRR loans, or BRRRR. So buy, refinance, or buy, renovate, rent it out, refinance, and repeat. Now they were doing these and they were doing these every 3 months, and they need to get their money out so they can go to the next property. A lot of capital partners make you wait 6 to 12 months. He needed his money on day 90. I was like, okay, let me figure out a capital partner and I'll make this work. So now I have this contact. I have this whale of a client doing, 10 a year. Plus he has this whole mentee group, and they're all doing 10 mentees are doing 1 loan a month every 4 months. So this was a big deal for me. I have to find a way to service this client. And I went to several conferences and ended up running into a capital partner who had exactly that loan type. We will refinance you on day 91 of ownership at the new ARV. So, and it took me a month or two to find this capital partner. So I go back to the client. I'm like, boom, I've got what you need. And then bam, I set up my brokerage, did my first loan, left my other brokerage. And that's how my brokerage really started, is because I saw a niche need in the market and I went out and sought for the answer to it, to the solution, until I found it and was able to provide it for that client. And that's what I do now for my clients.
Wonderful. Bridget, I'm so excited for you that you saw that need. And what I can tell here is that you saw a need and you went out and found a solution for it without a guarantee of getting paid. And that is entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That's what it's about. I know, and why we do it, ladies and gentlemen, is because if you have a job, you have a ceiling. And we just don't like ceilings. It's okay. I wanted to touch back on, you said boundaries, and this hits me pretty personal.
Yeah.
And you said a touch of the tism, which also hits me very personal. I'm just going to say neurodivergency. It's been my experience that neurodivergent humans have a really hard time with boundaries.
Yeah.
And when they start creating them, they feel like ultimatums to the rest of the world, because we've just been so nice for so long and let people take advantage of situations, because at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. It's probably a mistake is how we look at it, but it is a real problem. And as you go through your business and you're doing things because you have to get the dollars, you got to pay the mortgage, you got to do that stuff. Once you're out of that world and you're out of that matrix of living in fear and running every single day, your life is going to change quite a bit. And in some ways it's going to feel negative, but I promise you, keep moving forward. And when it's really, really hard, you're probably on the right path.
Yeah.
Keep moving. It's a wild part. You've used some letters, and we're going to clear some of them up right now.
Okay, great.
What are the most common mistakes investors make when structuring financial or rental property deals, especially when using DSCR loans? But before we go into that, can you explain to the audience what a DSCR loan is?
DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. It means, is the debt serviced? Is the debt covered? Does the rental income pay the mortgage, essentially? And I think the biggest mistake is people will see what they think is a good deal without understanding or knowing what the market rental income is in a certain area. The market rental income has to cover not only the mortgage, but the taxes, insurance, and if there's any HOA payments. So, I've had people come to me and say, hey, I want to get, the maximum financing on this, which in our case is 80%. So you have to put a 20% down payment. And it turns out the rental income will only allow them to borrow maybe 70%. So they have to put a 30% down payment. So I'll say you can either put 30% down, or you can go find a property that is a better fit, that either has higher market rental income or lower cost to get into. So that's the biggest thing, is you have to be aware of you have to have the outcome in mind. And it all starts with market rent. And then the next big factor is the appraisal.
Wonderful. Okay. I have a couple real estate properties myself, and my favorite one I let my mother live in. It has been for me a place to store a storage of value more than and a little bit of appreciation. I do single tenant homes. Grant Cardone says don't even start until you're 32, I believe, 32 tenants. Is there a sweet spot for that? And before you answer that question, I just wanted to point out here really quick. When you're buying real estate to rent it, you are not buying real estate. You're buying a real estate asset and you're buying a business. You're buying two different assets at the same time. And if you can pull it off right, and this is a really great retirement strategy, money make, a lot of great stuff. So I'm sorry. What do you think that sweet spot is for a first timer? Or maybe I've got two single tenant homes. What's my next step?
You always have to look at your strategy and your personal situation and your liquidity. So I'll give you an example. I had a single mother come to me, and she was blindsided by divorce out of nowhere, had two little kids, had a divorce settlement of $250,000. So if you can do the math, 250 isn't going to last very long with two little kids. And then eventually she's going to run out of money, right? Let's give it 6 years, maybe 5. Probably 5 years.
Maybe 2.
Instead of her running out and trying to sort out and scramble around and create a new career and hope she's in that career by year 5 and gets hired at, middle aged and all this kind of stuff with no experience, she decided to put it into real estate. Now, what she did is she went into an area that does Section 8 houses. She found a realtor who had a package of 3 homes for I believe it was 150,000. So all 3 homes together. Now these homes normally, or maybe it was 175, 180, something like that, but it was under 200. And these homes are all valued usually between 70 and 100 anyway, depending on how much repairs or how old they are or whatever. So she got a great deal on a package of 3 homes. Now her credit was a little messed up, so she could only qualify for 70% LTV. So she had to put 30% down. So that's 45,000
LTV
down.
is
LTV is loan to value. So how much money can you borrow versus the value? So again, that value was 150. She could only borrow 70% of that value, so she had to put 30% down payment. And 30% of 150 is 45,000. So out of her $250,000 settlement, she put 45,000 down. She still got 205 left. These properties ended up cash flowing $1,000 a month per property. So she now has bought herself a salary, you could call it, of $3,000 a month. So guess what she did? She did it again. Another package of 3 for maybe 200 this time. So she had to put 60 down. Well, she still got 140 left from her settlement. Now she's into 3 more properties, $3,000 a month, for a total of $6,000 a month. So it really depends your scenario. Now she could have taken that same 250, bought one really fancy Airbnb. Maybe she bought $1 million Airbnb, put 20% down. That's 200 grand. And that Airbnb could have turned around and maybe made her 100, 150 a year. I don't know. It depends where she's buying, what all she has to put into it. You know, she would have in that case only had 50,000 left to decorate it, market it, everything. So you have to really decide what's your best strategy and what your best case scenario is. Some people can cash out their 401k and they're like, I don't want to mess with Airbnb. I don't really want to mess with Section 8 tenants, even though it's guaranteed government payments. I want something that's going to appreciate a little more. So then you would put that in a mid-market rental. You'd find a house between $200,000 and $300,000 where the market rent covers, and you just have a normal house that somebody rents, right?
Absolutely.
Normal market rent. So you have to decide your strategy. Do you want a lot of cash flow? Do you want high risk, high down payment, high cash flow? There's your Airbnb. Do you want medium risk in something that's going to appreciate fairly well? Go to mid-market rental.
Absolutely. So you can design however you want, start small and grow. It's been my experience that more lower cost doors or mid cost doors is better business. Having a large asset that sits vacant for any amount of time is a wildly stressful situation. What current trends are you seeing in the real estate investment market, and how should investors adjust their strategies to take advantage?
That's probably going to touch a little bit on the last answer is current trends. You almost have to be careful where you're buying Airbnbs now. It's not always guaranteed that the city that you do this in is going to allow it next year, or that there's not going to be some culling of the amount there. So to me, it is high risk, high reward, but it also can end up very badly if the laws change. I'm seeing people do 2 different things now. If you've heard of mid-market rentals. So if you get a place near a hospital or a corporation who has a lot of turnover or employees that come for, say, 3 months at a time. So maybe you're down near the ocean. It's people who go out on an oil rig and they need an apartment shoreside for 3 months and then they go back to their assignment. So those are like mid-market rentals. Also insurance claim rentals. If someone's house burns down and the insurance company has to place the family somewhere while that house is being repaired, that's a mid-market rental. So you would set it up like an Airbnb where the whole thing is furnished, but your rentals are going to be between 3, 6, 9 months, something like that. So you're getting more than market rent, but maybe a little bit less than Airbnb. And then I'm seeing a lot of people get into Section 8 purchases because it's such an inexpensive way to get into real estate. I mean, we do loans as low as $50,000 and property values as low as $75,000. So if you found a $75,000 house to buy, it's going to cash flow. Say the rents are going to be $1,200 a month, so you'd cash flow probably $800. Then your down payment is only $15,000 plus closing costs. So if you've only got $20,000, $30,000 to play with, you could get into something that's still going to pay you back each month.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's a great business. If you know how to do it and you can collect rent, there's challenges across the board. There's lots of challenges, hot water heaters, washers and dryers, like all kinds of stuff. But if it's, I really like the approach, especially for the single mother of a duplex or an apartment complex and then live there too.
Yeah.
It's almost free rent or can be free rent and your business all at the same time. What core principles have guided you in building and sustaining long-term relationships with clients and investors?
Number 1 is honesty and trustworthiness. I can't tell you how many clients, we give base rates. We don't have the rates, and some capital partners do. And we'll allow you at that point, if you don't want closing costs, well, sure, we can roll it in and the rate goes up a little. Or if you want to buy the rate down even more, then the cost at closing goes up a little, but you get an even lower rate. So we have all these options. And I've seen people who encountered other capital partners who told them one thing, and then, you have a 30-day closing. So they get to the closing table, the capital or the lender, the capital partner, the broker has changed the terms, changed the rate, changed the cost, and now you're stuck and you have to close, because if you don't close, you lose your earnest money deposit. So some of them out there are so dishonest, they back you into a corner and you're stuck with the terrible terms that they give you. And I find it so shocking that that's how people operate. But again, I think it goes back to that touch of autism. Like, I find it shocking that people say things they don't mean. Like, what? And then I have to go decipher and overthink, like, are you telling the truth or are you not? And so other people have to deal with this in lenders, and you just don't get that with me. Like, you get the number that you get, or at least you get an explanation of what's going on. Like, we do have a capital partner that floats to close. Like, here's the rate today, but they're going to float to close and you'll get your rate in closing week. And right now they've been going down. Right. So I'm hearing so many people have a dishonest experience that I think that's number one. Number two, a lot of people don't like to be on the phone these days. And I have sold entire deals over text. You will fill out an intake form, right? Like, I don't actually want you to call me and give you your scenario. I have a nice little questionnaire where you fill in everything and you do it on your own time. You could do it at midnight. You could do it at 2 p.m., whatever. It comes to my quoting team. My quoting team looks for the best program, sends you back the rate quote based on that. And then I will text you and say, hey, we sent you your quote. Call me with questions or let me know what program you want. They're like, yeah, this is great. I want the 30-year fixed at blah, blah. Okay, well, we're going to send you the application and the upload link. So then the application gets sent. You get a nice little link where you can upload everything. So we never have to get on the phone if you don't want to.
And it's great. People like to communicate in different modalities, and it's really important to have that different structure for different people to communicate with you in your business. And I think AI is going to help us do that in ways that we didn't even know was there. Mm-hmm. Bridget, I've got some other questions for you, but we're wrapping up towards the end here. And although I don't know what I can do here. I cannot tell people that it's a good idea to go out and do ayahuasca or psilocybin. That you need to talk to your doctor and your medical professionals before you do any of those things. Mm-hmm. Although I've had similar experiences, and it's profound outcomes on the other side of that, as far as how I think and how I move on this planet, how I connect to the planet, how I see the world as a whole. If there's a young woman or a woman that's going through a divorce and some kind of tragic thing, she's trying to recreate her life, what advice do you give her when everything looks like it's getting ready to change and she's uncertain, and maybe, she's in her 30s or 40s and thought she had life figured out, but now she's into a giant change. Yeah. And from my experience, the way you thought yesterday is not going to get you where you need to be. Mm-hmm. It's going to get you where you were yesterday. Yeah.
What's interesting is I'm at a pivot right now where my business is doing great, and I want to offer more to that exact audience that you just named, because I am 41, divorced, was lost for about 5 years trying to navigate it. And now that I've put together all the parts and pieces, I'm actually launching a course and a program for that exact type of person. Because for my specific situation, I came out of what I now know was marriage to a narcissist who was constantly gaslighting and manipulating me. And I swear this type of mental abuse is like you're locked up in a basement with chains, but nobody sees it. Like, mentally, you're locked up. Like, you are constantly your reality is being torn down, and you can't even trust yourself, right? Because you're being told one thing, even though something else happened. And so you really just lose trust in yourself. And it takes years for you to come back from sort of spiraling or trying to find that trust or find that truth again. And the problem with my specific example, or my brain, is in my family lineage. My father had a tendency to his emotional response, or his response to not processing emotions, was either like a psychotic episode or bipolar mania or schizophrenia or whatever, right? So for me, what I noticed is whenever the emotional pain was super great, that was the amount of what you can medically describe as maybe like a mania. That is the amount of mania or fun I was trying to have. And because I didn't understand how to process my emotions. So now if you've got your brain map, your brain talks to other parts of your brain in certain ways, and it makes connections, and your brain is lazy. So once it makes those connections, that's it. It doesn't want to form a new connection. What ayahuasca did for me is, when I was experiencing emotional pain, instead of going to, oh my gosh, we got to have all this fun and be manic, ayahuasca, it's like ski slopes. Instead of all these grooves, we re-snowed the ski slopes. And then my brain got to make healthy connections of like, oh, when we have emotional pain, it's okay to cry. When we have emotional pain, it's okay to look at what you allowed that you shouldn't have. It's okay, so now it's making all these new neural connections. And that's what ayahuasca did for me, is it put my soul back in my body. It opened my heart, which I had closed, obviously, because I had been so hurt. And it repaved the ski slopes to natural, healthy ones. Now, that's not where it ends. That's not all you can do. And I think psilocybin probably helped a little, because if you read How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, this is the book that sort of inspired me to take a look at this stuff. You kind of understand why that can help, but it gets to a point where, okay, that's it. Like, it does not help anymore. Once you do it so many times, or once you've been through enough therapy sessions, it will do the max it can do. And then it's just sort of like a party thing if you keep doing it. So you really have to learn when to stop. After that, you have to have some kind of emotional integration. And so that's what the course ALA did for me. Now you can go do any course. ALA is very triggering for people. So if you look it up online, there's been a lot of success, but there's been a lot of frustrated people come out of it and not finish it, because it makes you face yourself in the mirror. Anytime you have an interaction with someone, I'm experiencing half of Bridget and half of Ken right now. And I go have a conversation with my mother, I'm experiencing half of me and half of my mother. What ALA did is it allowed this container for all the participants to experience themselves as themselves and not the other people in the room. So it's the first time you fully experience 100% yourself. It was shocking. All the things I didn't know about myself, all the things that I was like, no, I'm definitely over that, or I'm through that. And so this brings it out and it helps you get on the other side of it. And so that's the emotional integration after, the brain remapping. But yeah, I would do it under guidance. It's not something you seek out. It's something that if you're ready, it presents itself. And that's what I was told, because I wanted to do ayahuasca a year earlier and I could not find a way to do it. And then like, boom, it just happened. I was getting Reiki massage or something, and she brought it up, and then I signed up, and 3 weeks later I was there. So yeah, it's the kind of thing, it's not for everyone. Not every modality is for everyone. Some people need to go through religious deliverance, which I have also done. And so you can go from the spiritual side to the religious side, whatever speaks to you. But, there are dark entities that hang on to you from the soul ties of a marriage and a narcissist energy that you have got to deliver out of your energy field. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
In my book, Reclaim Sobriety, I talk about my experience with psilocybin and EMDR coupled together and profound outcomes. The book that I found that in, not the psilocybin, but the EMDR, is The Body Keeps the Score, which I think is a very, very, very important book for anybody. If you're going to start a business, you're going to experience trauma.
Yes.
It's just, if you're going to, let me say, if you're going to start a business and get to success, you're going to experience trauma. I don't know anybody that has ever started a business and been completely successful from day one without any trauma. You're going to have to look at days with, oh my gosh, how am I going to make my mortgage? I got to make payroll this Friday. The electric company's going to shut me off. Like, there's a ton of stuff that's going to get piled on you that you didn't even ever expect. And you're like, man, I just wanted to, knit blankets and start this company selling blankets. But as things grow, these things compound, and 2 employees doubles it, and 3 employees triples it, and 5 employees, gosh, it's an obscene amount of complexity in every single business. So, this is not a mindset podcast. This is about business, but in business, you have to make sure that you're keeping your mindset sharp and strong and using whatever tools are available to you to push yourself to the next level, because it is a challenge every single day. Bridget, thank you so much.
It wasn't until I did the mindset work that I had the business I have, because I didn't believe I was worthy of it. I didn't believe that I was allowed to have it. I didn't believe I could achieve success unless I partnered with someone else. And so breaking through all of that, I believe I can have it. I'm going to form an LLC. I believe I can have it. I'm going to build a website without customers. And then my energy aligned with it so much, I turned up to a conference and found a whale of a customer. So it can happen just like that.
Jump and the net will appear.
Yeah.
Right. And the other one that I love, and I think this is my personal quote, is there is no peace in limbo. You have to make a decision. You have to move forward. And that is where you will find peace. Once you make the commitment, you don't have to get to the end goal. That is, but once you commit to going after it, that's where you'll find peace. But you have to really commit and not half-handed. It's
deliberate and decisive. That's what I always tell be deliberate and decisive.
Yes. Bridget, I've had such a great time talking with you today. And my favorite podcast I watch it almost every single night, is Diary of a CEO.
Mhm.
And in that, he asks a person at the end of every podcast to write down a question for the next guest. And he sells these really cool cards. I
Cool.
should probably get an affiliate link.
Yeah.
I don't have an affiliate link, but I love it so much. And I'm going to ask you a question from James Smith. Are you ready?
Yes.
What is an inadequacy that you admit to that you could work on starting tomorrow?
Thinking I can be the expert in everything all the time. And uh, I say that because, I spent some time with my mother, and she at the time had just gone on insulin. And I was so furious that I spent probably 2 weeks nonstop asking like ChatGPT and different sources online, but you've got to know what question to ask underneath the question that gets presented, right? How to get rid of her diabetes, how to reverse her insulin because she had type 2, but she'd been put on insulin. And I'm like, we are not an unhealthy, I'm not doing this. Like, you're going to be here for until you're 100, 120. So we started off with fasting. Then we went to veggies only or something. And then we eliminated all the carbs from her diet. No bread, no pasta, no processed carbs, I should say, because you can get carbs from veggies and fruits, right? And so then I looked up, well, what's the amount of carbs she should have per meal? Well, we capped that at 15 carbs per meal. And I gave her all these meal plan. And then I learned, well, if you have more muscle in your body, which if you go to my Instagram page, you can see I've been working out for 25 years. So muscle's always been like, that's my longest standing relationship. So I'm like, if you have more muscle in your body, it will suck up the extra sugar in your blood because we got to get the sugar out of your blood. So got her a gym program. She's going to the gym every day for the last, now it's been since January. And within 1 month, she was off the insulin. Within another 2 months after that, so 90 days, her A1C had fallen an entire point, and her doctor was shocked as she's lost 40 pounds. Right. And so an inadequacy is that maybe there are experts and there are things that you can and should outsource and delegate. But then also an inadequacy could be that you realize you are your best advocate. No one is going to love you as much as you love you. Not your spouse, not your parents, not your kids. No one loves you as much as you do. So you have to be your own advocate, and you have to really be the expert in the things that matter to you. And so sometimes, like, I cook all of my own food. I have a garden. I don't like to really dine out anymore because I don't really trust where the food comes from. I don't trust the food standards. So I don't know, maybe that's an inadequacy because I don't live a normal life, but I also feel like I get to control the health of my machine that is my body. So maybe I spend a little bit more time on that than I should if I were going to be this efficient multimillionaire business person, because I spend too much time cooking my own food and meal planning and growing a garden and all these, and waking up without
all those
alarm.
things are really important.
Yeah. So I don't know. That seems like it could be an inadequacy because I could probably be more successful.
Maybe a little control.
Yeah.
Bridget, thank you so much for your time today. If somebody wants to work with you in your brokerage, how would they get a hold of you? And if they want to reach out to you personally, where would they find you at?
Instagram, I am THE Bridget Brick. So the Bridget Brick on all socials, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. TikTok's a little more spiritual stuff. So it's more Facebook and Instagram that you'll find my content about mortgages. GetBrickCapital.com. You can see all of our mortgage options. You can get a rate there. And if you want to reach out individually, I guess Instagram would be the place. We also have our rate link on there. So if you want to get a quote, just fill out the intake form.
Fantastic, Bridget. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Bye-bye.